All right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 Baseball coaching community. Great to be here with all of you this week. Our weekly get-together where we build our coaching expertise, especially in the key areas first and foremost. I hope everyone enjoyed the last 3 episodes. The interview with JP Nerbun. JP is what I would consider an expert in the area of building great team cultures, the team culture triangle. Coaches, players, parents. I know I got a lot out of those 3 episodes, and hopefully all of you did too. We're going to work back into some solo episodes, have some great content that I've been sitting on, excited to get to. In fact, the next 3 episodes are already outlined, bulleted out. I will be recording another interview early February, and I can see this being the trajectory moving forward. Being episode 217, I could see the trajectory of this podcast in terms of the structure and layout of each episode going the way of a third interviews and 2/3 solo episodes. Hey, but these solo episodes in a lot of ways are built from a curation of all the great knowledge that's out there and then vetted through the lens of experience and then boiled down to the key parts, the key things that we need to know as youth coaches, as youth parents, youth players, so we can fit them in successfully and efficiently in our busy schedules, because coaching is not our day jobs. And this goes back to why I started this podcast. It wasn't that there weren't other baseball podcasts out there, but almost all of them were interview format. And those interviews were with professional coaches, college coaches, all of which were successful to a degree, some very successful at their level. But we all know professional baseball, college baseball, even varsity high school baseball in most areas, it's a different ball game. And I found this out as somebody who played high-level college baseball at Long Beach State for 4 years, parts of 3 seasons professionally in the minor leagues, playing for a very high-level high school baseball program in Southern California, and then transitioning to coaching primarily varsity high school, while also coaching college players and professional players on the side. But it wasn't until I started to coach 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 5 days a week at the youth level from the ages of 7 all the way to 14 that I saw there was a difference, and not just the obvious difference of skill level and where they're at on the skill development ladder, but more so meeting coaches, talking with coaches, feeling out their pain points. It wasn't always that they didn't know what a good swing looked like or a good pitcher looked like or what good defense looked like. It was trying to coach youth baseball successfully within the tight parameters of their busy schedules, their busy lives, their day jobs, that small amount of field time that they got, practice time, and also the small amount of time that coaches and parents have to absorb as much information as they can to be better for their teams and their kids. And then, as last week's episode showed you, a huge challenge that is almost non-existent at the professional level and college level, not saying it doesn't exist, but almost non-existent, is that component of parents teaming with the coaches to create a great team culture, a great environment. High school coaches have to deal with this a lot, the parents. That's a big thing in high school baseball. Probably as much as youth baseball, maybe even more, but it's definitely not something professional coaches deal with, and very little at the college level. So I saw the difference firsthand, and that's why we started this podcast. And I can see the podcast structure moving forward, continuing our weekly get-together, and I can see it shift to a little bit more interview and a little less solo. Up until this point, we've done about 90% solo, 10% interview. And I think it's going to be a great format moving forward, especially with the goal of getting better as a podcast, as an 80-20 baseball community. We have a solid foundation from all the previous episodes. We're going to continue to have great interviews, and we'll continue to build out an awesome and effective and efficient coaching plan, parenting plan, youth baseball plan and process, a great blueprint, if you will. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a star baseball player who flamed out and what we can learn from his story. I have a top coaching quote of the week, and I'm going to share out the best coaching quote that I've found recently. We're going to break it down and see how we can use it to be much better coaches. Also, we're bringing back our top 5 coaching tweets of the month. Now, I'm calling it X moving forward, but I will use the word tweet to help with that differentiation, to differentiate between the posting on other social media platforms. Also, I went to a big game recently, and I want to share what I saw and what we can learn from that. First off, our top coaching quote of the week. Now, I'm sure most of you remember this coach. I'm certain most of you listening remember some of the teams that he coached, at least hearing about them, watching them on TV. I don't think this coach gets as much credit as he deserved, partly because I think a lot of us think he might have recruited players using money and other means. And while that's allowed now through the NIL at the college level back in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, it wasn't. And this coach, Jerry Tarkanian, coached at my alma mater, Long Beach State. That's where he made his first big move as a coach and then got the job at UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He really put UNLV on the map. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if guys were driving around in nice cars when they were playing for him, but there's no denying the fact that he was a great coach and he was great with the players and he understood how to win basketball games, how to win games. And he was big on the 80-20 stuff. When you dive into Jerry Tarkanian, you really understand that he cared about the big things, the most important things, the big needle movers, with a heavy emphasis on those things. That doesn't mean he didn't care about details, but he made sure that he got the big needle movers moving big time. So our top coaching quote of the week, this is absolute gold from Jerry Tarkanian. Quote, "The more they have to think, the slower their feet move." End quote. So Jerry Tarkanian is obviously talking about his players, and this goes for any sport. Of course, he's talking about basketball and on the court, but this holds 100% true for every single sport, including baseball, definitely baseball. Quote, "The more our players have to think, the slower our players' feet move." End quote. So I paraphrased it a little bit, but that's what he's saying. The more they have to think, the slower they move. What does that specifically mean to us as coaches? Overcoaching not only confuses our players mentally, it slows them down physically. And we have all heard about the game speeding up. It sped up on our players. The game looked fast for our players. It's never good when the game is going too fast for our players. So one way to slow down the game is to get our players to think less, or ideally, not at all. Now, I think shooting for complete autopilot for our players is far-fetched. Getting them to think less is not. There was a reason UNLV basketball played fast. And it wasn't just because they had good players. There were other good players on other good teams. The reason they dominated, he erred on the side of letting his kids play. He promoted them to play fast. And to do that as coaches, we need to be super cautious with how much we're getting our players to think. Couple strategies to help with this. Before we share anything with our players, make sure we've bulleted it out, we've thought it through, we've synthesized it, we stick to emphasizing the big needle movers, we keep the main thing. And another way to help not get our players to overthink is to keep our coaching messages short and sweet. Time them, keep them short. One main point, one key idea, one key thing that will help the most, and then work from there. It's not that we want to forget or dismiss some of the other coaching pointers, some of the other tips that we have. It's that we want to put them on the back burner. It's that we want to put them aside and implement them and communicate them at a better time. We drip feed our players, starting with the big needle movers, and our message should be concise, clear, and moreover, we should focus on creating an environment where they get high quality reps, not a bunch of coaching pointers. High quality reps that helps to teach our players how to play baseball the correct way and at a fast pace, because the games are going to be fast. The better the team, the higher the level, the better the competition, the further in the playoffs, the faster the game will move overall, or at least on average. So if we can embed the skills, the knowledge our players need to be great players or to be good players or just to be better players, we have to keep them away from playing slow. So Jerry Tarkanian, Tark, with a phenomenal coaching quote that we can learn from, quote, The more they have to think, the slower their feet move, end quote. A lot of us coaches think that the more we talk, the more we communicate, the more information we share, the better our players are going to be. That's not true. The law of diminishing returns comes pretty quick. Speaking of moving quickly, I'm in the Boise area. We just got our first In-N-Out. Now, there are great burger places everywhere, and surely In-N-Out doesn't have the best burger, but it does do some things really well. Of course, the food is fresh. They keep their prices down. Their drive-through line moves relatively quick considering how many cars are in it. So there was an 8-hour line, I guess, at the first In-N-Out to open in the Boise area. The first one to open in Idaho, there was an 8-hour line. I guess it's down to 2 hours now, a month later. I told my wife, I like In-N-Out, but if it's over 30 minutes, I'm out. So we're waiting for that line to shorten up. Now, you might be thinking one of two things right now. Coach Bo, why are you talking about a burger place? And two, you're making me hungry, and I'm trying to cut back on some calories as a New Year's resolution. Well, I bring up In-N-Out because I was talking about it with my family. And over the winter break time, New Year's, Christmas time, I head over with my family. We go to California, visit my wife's family, and we hit up In-N-Out because it's about 7 minutes away from where we stay. So I went 3 times in a 2-week span, and I'm always fascinated watching the employees do their thing. You can see in the restaurant pretty easily from the drive-through, and you deal with some employees, some folks from In-N-Out when you're ordering. Most of you know they come up to your car, and I can't help but see the difference from there and Carl's Jr., Taco Bell, even Starbucks. I can't help but see the difference consistently across the board with their employees, their customer service. There's no way they can get all those employees to work that hard, to be that positive, to smile that much, to work that well together if they didn't bring on only high quality employees, good people, good teammates. There's no way they get to the level they've gotten to by crossing their fingers and hoping they can mold and shape just any employee that they hire. I guarantee they're not hiring employees that they think they need to fully fix and completely mold. I bet they focus on hiring great attitudes and go from there. Doesn't matter if they've ever cooked a fry, a burger, worked a cash register, taken an order. I don't think that matters to them. They hire great attitudes and go from there. Coaches, bring on great attitudes and go from there. Never fall for the talent tease. Now, if you can get a great attitude and a great talent, you've hit a grand slam. If you get a great attitude, you hit a home run. Any player with a bad attitude, a selfish attitude, a low hustle, uncoachable attitude is a strikeout. Doesn't matter if they hit home runs, it's still a strikeout for the team. So in with the good attitudes and out with the bad attitudes. Now moving to the next topic. This is from an article from Baseball America. It's an article about a former player, Brandon Wood. Some of you might be familiar with Brandon Wood. He was with the Angels organization, and I'll read part of the article here. It's relatively short, but there's a great message here for all of us coaches and even players. Here we go. Brandon Wood has invaluable insight to pass on to any young player who walks into his batting cage in his adopted hometown of Billings, Montana. That insight includes more than just tips on the right swing plane or proper timing mechanism in the batter's box. Wood knows success because he experienced it, record-setting, elite-level success. He knows the mentality it takes to unlock those kind of results. He also knows the mentality that can tear it all down, that can bring a player down. In 2005, 2 years after the Angels selected the Scottsdale, Arizona high school product in the first round, Brandon Wood went on to annihilate the High A California League. In 134 games, he hit 43 home runs and 53 doubles and 5 triples. He finished the season with 101 extra base hits, making him the only player since 1963 in the minor leagues to reach 100 extra base hits in a season. He went on to hit another 14 homers in 29 games at the Arizona Fall League, which is, some of you know, a league in the fall in Arizona, of course, with the top prospects or a lot of the top prospects from every organization. So he hit 57 home runs in 163 games, along with 53 plus doubles and 5 plus triples. He started getting comparisons to Cal Ripken Jr., Troy Glaus. After a solid follow-up season in Double-A, Wood was ready to fulfill his promise as a top prospect and be a big league star. It was then, just as Wood had reached the verge of breaking into the big leagues, that self-doubt began to creep in. He started to read less into the reports lauding his promise and instead couldn't shake nagging whispers about his strikeout rate and if he could ever actually tap into that home run power at the major league level. When he finally did get the call, sporadic playing time and a seeming lack of faith from Angels manager Mike Scioscia continued to erode Wood's confidence. By the 2010 season, Wood was riddled with anxiety, especially in the batter's box. On his daily drive to the ballpark, the second Angel Stadium popped into view, he'd be stricken by a panic attack. So a player that for years made the game look so easy, effortless. Success looked to come super easy to him. Now he's having panic attacks as soon as he sees the stadium. This is a pro player. If pro players are feeling these things, young players are feeling these things too. Different levels, of course. But that part about not having the faith from his manager that helped to erode Wood's confidence. Then he went on to internalize his struggles, and he talks about his hand-eye coordination when his brain is overthinking, got anxiety. His hands just aren't doing what the brain's telling him to do, and it's not a good feeling. And in 2014, he hung him up. So he never did anything with his career at the major league level. Now, he did have a successful career, all things considered. When you think about how many players start playing Little League, how many players play high school ball, he had a successful career in terms of just a baseball career. But it really turned quick, and I wonder how much better he would have done had he felt more support from his manager. It also talks about how he internalized his struggles. I wonder how much better he would have done if he was able to just talk about it, to share it, to get it off his chest. Sometimes as coaches, we can help our players more by just giving them confidence than we can by teaching them the perfect swing or a great new pitch or how to play a stellar shortstop. So I came across that article, although it's a few years old, I came across it recently and wanted to share that with all of us so we can nip it in the bud and be proactive with our players and with our coaching strategies so we don't have to look back with regret that we could have done something a little different. Now for the top 5 coaching tweets of the month. Number 1, this is by Paul Bear Bryant. Fitting that Nick Saban retired this past week. It's fitting that this quote comes from Paul Bear Bryant, the other most famous Alabama football coach. He said, quote, "No coach has ever won a game by what he knows. It's what his players know that counts." End quote. Now that's a good way to look at knowledge. It's not what we know as a coach, it's what our players know. I'll take that one step further. Now, as great as Coach Paul Bear Bryant was, I think he left off a key part of this quote, or maybe it wasn't included in what I found. I would go one step further and say, it's what the players can successfully and consistently implement at game speed that counts. Not how much information we can give them or how much we know as coaches. It's not how much we know or how much we can tell them. It's what our players can successfully and consistently implement or do at game speed that counts. Oh, by the way, that quote was provided by @CoachingAdvice. @CoachingAdvice. It's a good account to follow. The next one is by OK Swings. @OK Swings. Here it is. The pitches you take are just as important as the pitches you swing at. Be disciplined in your hunt. Another great message for coaching up hitters. The pitches that we take, the pitches that we don't swing at, are as important as the pitches we do swing at. And that's why with less than 2 strikes, we're swinging at pitches in this area. And that area might adjust for each hitter a little bit, but they should know that they're not just swinging at everything. So the pitches we take are just as important as the pitches we swing at. Be disciplined in the hunt. That is by OK Swings. Next one is by Coach Miner 3 @Coach Miner 3. Coach Miner 3, his name's Brant Miner, posted a picture of a sign that says, "Uncoachable kids become unemployable adults. Let your kids get used to someone being tough on them. It's life." Another great message. Uncoachable kids become unemployable adults. Let your kids get used to someone being tough on them. It's life. All right, the last 2 tweets of the month. Well, check that. We actually have 2 bonus coming up after these last 2. So they're not technically the last 2 of the official 5. No, we have 2 bonus. This one is by Jerry Weinstein, a very well-known baseball coach @JWan Catching. After coaching his team in the college football national championship game, Amos Alonzo Stagg was asked, "What do you think of your team?" He responded, "I'll let you know in 20 years. He knew that his greatest victories as a coach of young people had very little to do with the scoreboard and much more to do with the impact he would have on the rest of their lives. I love it. Won the college football national championship game, was asked, "What do you think of your team?" And he says, "I'll let you know in 20 years. Gold." Next tweet of the month, Greg Burge at GB1121 posted a quote from Kobe Bryant saying, "It's not about the number of hours you practice, it's about the number of hours your mind is present during the practice," end quote. So it's not how many hours we practice with our team, our kids, or how many hours they practice. It's about the number of hours they're present during practice, the quality of the practice. Now, one way to get their mind present is by having fast-paced practices, fun practices, fast-paced and competitive. Those are some quick ways to keep kids present. Don't give their mind time to stray. All right, the next one is by Hoop Herald at the Hoop Herald. Quote, "One player's selfish attitude can poison a locker room and make it hard, if not impossible, to establish teamwork," end quote. And that quote was from Dean Smith. Having some players with lesser ability will not poison a team's chances, but having one player with a selfish attitude, that can poison the team culture. And as Dean Smith said, can make it hard, if not impossible, to establish teamwork. It can make for a miserable season. The last coaching tweet of the month is from at Coaching Advice. Quote, "If the only reason I coached was to win basketball games, my life would be pretty shallow," end quote. And that quote was from Coach K, the very famous and well-known Duke basketball coach. "If the only reason I coached was to win basketball games, my life would be pretty shallow," end quote. So the purpose of discussing these posts, these tweets, is to mold and shape our paradigm so we can be better coaches, so we can mold and improve and create a better operating system as coaches. And I don't think we can hear enough great coaching messages as we continue to shape and mold and improve our mindset as coaches. So we don't know anything other than doing it the right way for all of our players, for the team, for our kid, for the baseball coaching community, and for all the youth that we come in contact with to help out and support and serve. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to hit on, I was in the 6th row of the national championship game last Monday, Michigan versus Washington. I go to a bowl game every year with one of my childhood friends, buddies that I've known since the 2nd grade. And the last 4 years, we've gone to the national championship game. He's a big football fan. In fact, he's got his daughter playing flag football and he's coaching flag football. He was sharing stuff about how big that is getting for girls. That's pretty cool. He said it's blowing up in his area and it's a lot of fun. You know, football is the ultimate team game, right? If it's not the ultimate team game, it's got to be at the very top of being a team sport. Like in baseball, you could be the 9 hitter and the right fielder, but you're going to still get a ball come your way. You're still going to get your turn at bat. You're going to get your turn in the spotlight. But as a right guard or a defensive tackle, you're not getting that time in the spotlight. I bet if you watched your favorite football team's entire season, there's a good chance that they only mention the left guard's name a few times, and usually it's after a holding penalty, so it's not even good recognition. But the number 9 batter is going to get 3 at-bats a game, and their name's going to be discussed quite a bit. So it's great to see the flag football taking off for the girls there at the youth level. That's awesome. So we're at the game, and something that stood out, the thing that stood out the most at the college football championship game, Michigan-Washington, the thing I saw that Michigan did phenomenal is they tackled so well. Their defense tackled. So some coaches will spend all this time and have 15 different defensive schemes, and they'll spend hours on end hiding and disguising those schemes and their defenses. But at the end of the day, you got to tackle. Missed tackles will cost you way more than being in a cover 2 versus a man-to-man cover 0 defense. Now, I'm not an expert, but I know there are 3 things that matter, and these are the 3 things Michigan defense did. And they shut down a high-powered Washington offense. They didn't get cute. They were good at the 80-20, alignment, assignment, tackle. Those 3 things. Have your defense lined up properly. They should know their assignment, and they need to tackle. Everything else is gravy. Alignment, assignment, and tackle. They were lined up. They all had their assignments dialed in. It was very rare that there was a wide open player. When the Washington players caught the ball, and I want to say Washington threw the ball 50 plus times, there was a Michigan guy nearby 49 of those times, and they tackled him almost immediately. They lined up right, they knew their assignment, and they tackled. And they won a national title and went 15-0. So I wanted to share that. As baseball coaches, we want to coach up the hitting approach, pitch selection. We want our pitchers to throw strikes. We want our defense in the right spot. Then we want them in a ready position, ready to play, present, ready to go. And we want them to know where to go with the ball. Base running, we want the simple mindset of calculated aggressiveness. We want them being aggressive, but not take crazy risks. The 20%, the 10% that drives 80 to 90% of our success as coaches with player skills, the team success, team culture, etc. And that's something that really stood out. It wasn't that Michigan did 10 things amazing. They were the best tackling team I've seen in person, or at least the game they had was the best tackling game I've seen. Their defense was in the right spots and they tackled. And on offense, they didn't turn the ball over. Sometimes we want to look for that one play, that one thing that really stood out in the game. I think we have to look at the summation, the overall picture, to see what makes great teams in any sport great and gives us the best chance of consistently having success out there on the field. All right, next week, I'm going to share a winter arm strengthening tip. I'm going to talk about an award we can give to our players, not at the end of the season, but more often. I'm going to also share out a fascinating statement that I read that came from a professional baseball player who played 7 years of professional baseball and played a dozen plus years of youth baseball, of amateur baseball. And he said he never knew something about his game that should have been taught to him by the time he was 10. So I'll share that with you. And I think it's a huge competitive advantage just sitting there by coaching this up as soon as possible. And I'll share out some variations of ways as coaches we can encourage our players to stay in the game, even though the game didn't start so well for our team or players. So some ways to share a message, some messages that we can share with our players that are short and concise to help encourage them, to get them going, to motivate them, or at least to keep them optimistic and engaged in the game, even though it may not have started all that well. All right. I got a few emails in the past couple days, super positive. Love getting that great feedback and the positive messages from coaches out there that are getting a lot out of this podcast. Thank you for being a coach. Thank you for improving your coaching game by being here. And until next week, we'll take care of our health so we can be at our best for our families, those close friends, and the baseball community. And take what you've learned here, take it out to the training environment, take it out to practice, to the batting cages, incorporate it into your upcoming plans for the season. And I look forward to being back here next week with all of you. This has been Coach Bo, and until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.